Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. As part of a comprehensive news analysis, today we'll be discussing 5 important articles out of the Hindu newspaper, daily edition. Before we begin, a very important announcement for you. On 13th November, 9:30 a.m., we have a very important mock for you. As part of a prelims test series, we have a free test for you, which is a polity test on 13th November, 9:30 a.m. It is available both in online and offline mode. Along with that, it is both in Hindi and English, and you can go to any of our offline centers to give it or give it online and get an all India rank. As I said, like the first test, 13th November test is also free of cost. We would encourage you to give this test and understand where is your preparation vis-a-vis all the other aspirants in India itself. With this, let's move to the first topic itself, which is related to higher education. All of us are impacted in a way with this basic topic because all of us do go to universities. And what this article is technically trying to point out is that in India, we have a major issue with regards to autonomy of higher education institutions, universities and state universities, and that is in turn reflecting in India's ranking all across the world when it comes to where are our institutes vis-a-vis the other institutes all across world, especially in Europe and in the US. So none of India's institutions of higher education appear in the top 100 universities in the world itself, and in the 2023 edition of the QS World Universities ranking, we have 3 of our higher institutions in the top 200, thereafter another 3 in the top 300 and 2 more in the top 400, but we have none of our institutes in the first 100. So what this article is technically trying to point out is that we need to change the regime in which the higher education is working right now. What he is trying to argue before we go to the nitty-gritty itself is that our regulatory framework is very tight, which means that we are controlling from student intake to curriculum to financial autonomy, everything with regards to universities, and the UGC, the University Grants Commission, along with the AICTE, all are technically pushing too much control over either the engineering institutes or the humanities institutes, universities and state universities. What he's arguing is that we technically need a light but tight regulatory framework, which is it allows for autonomy and is also empowering, but it is not totally loose in that sense. So he technically points out that it is technically the UGC and the other institutions, regulatory institutions, which are pushing too much control over the universities in India itself. So the universities of all subjects are subject to very strict regulatory regime, abiding by the UGC regulations, and the AICTE, which is technically engineering guidelines, encompasses all aspects of functioning from faculty recruitment to student admission to award of degrees. So every aspect of the university, there needs to be a permission which needs to be taken from the UGC. Every decision with regards to money, be it degree, be it courses, be it curricula, everything is technically asked from the UGC and the AICTE, and this is totally contrary to what happens abroad, where the best universities are continuously sensitized about the importance of their autonomy, be it organizational, financial, staffing or academic, and they are trained and enabled to make their own decisions, which in India we are not ready to push. And the large number of commissions and committees which have been formed with regards to education itself have been pushing, and even the National Education Policy 2020 has been pushing that there needs to be higher education autonomy. Now please try to understand the larger picture here. The picture is India is not represented in the first 100 universities across the world, and the best universities get a lot of autonomy from their country itself. Therefore in India, because of the UGC, the AICTE, there's so much regulatory framework that we don't teach our universities to take their own decisions. For everything it needs to go to the UGC itself. And therefore every commission which has come into India to say do we need educational reform always argues that there needs to be higher education autonomy and higher education reform. So we know that it is a problem, and even the National Education Policy which was introduced in 2020 talks about it, but the problem is that we are not technically implementing it in the right way. So what is the way forward? The way forward is that we need a tight but light regulatory framework that insists into a regime which fosters a culture of empowerment. We give our universities a light regime, which is that they are free to do what they want to do with regards to student intake, curricula and their financial autonomy, but at the same point of time we also have a framework which makes sure that there is quality control. The National Education Policy talks about academic and administrative autonomy, and it says that it is essential For making higher education multidisciplinary, teachers and institutional autonomy is the sine qua non in promoting creativity and innovation. However, we have so much selective execution of the policies within the NEP that it is in turn leading to development in the opposite direction. We are conveniently interpreting the sections of the NEP. So before we move to the next topic, what is this basic topic? The topic is trying to talk about a very important concept with regards to education in India, which is that we are not technically represented in the first 100 universities in the world, which is an astonishment with regards to how many colleges and universities we have. Therefore, the problem is university level control by the UGC and other regulatory frameworks. Therefore, we need a light but tight, a regime in which higher education institutions are given autonomy. They have their space to learn and innovate, and not everything comes from the UGC or the AICTE. This is a very important topic because in India, educational reform, police reforms are always important. You can use this in an ethics paper, you can use it in GS paper 3, and generally you can talk about the social issues attached to if universities are not able to come out of their cocoon itself. So with this, let's move to the second topic, which is Moody's India's growth outlook. Much like the IMF, the World Bank, now finally Moody has also changed its projection for India's growth, which is that the global rating firm Moody's Investor Services on Friday scaled down India's growth projection to 7% from 7.7%, citing the weakening of the rupee, which is a major issue with regards to the dollar and high oil prices. And it has also warned us that the next year we will be around 4.8%. So why is this important? It is important for your preparation because you need to know that it's not one institution or two institutions. It is all across all regulatory institutions across the world when it comes to rating and when it comes to growth projections. All of them are revising it, and they're revising it to go lower. And more than that, everybody is projecting a recession next year, and this is technically linked to Russia-Ukraine in a way, because it is the Russia-Ukraine oil crisis which is in turn creating inflation and in turn dampening the development and consumption in the world itself. Therefore, the Moody's growth outlook looks bleak in that regard. India is not the only country which they've done, but still it's a bleak concept because everybody is talking about slowdown. And as a country, we need to brace for this because recessions are not good. So what Russia has technically done is it's induced such global impact that it is technically now going to create a recession next year. So what are the considerations which were there for downgrading the 7.7% to 7%? High inflation, again linked to energy and oil crisis across the world. More than that, high interest rates, where all the central banks are technically trying to control the runaway inflation by increasing the rates itself. Slow global growth, which is technically because again of the high fuel prices, 10-year peak inflation in the European sector itself, the weakening rupee, and the oil prices are exerting a lot of inflationary pressure on the economy. And therefore, taking all these things into consideration, we believe that they have now degraded from 7.7 to 7%. Now this is only going to become worse as we go on, and basically the regulatory bodies, be it all the bodies, be it IMF, be it World Bank, be it Moody's, be it S&P, all are in a way revising everything because of the fact that this was an unexpected consequence of Ukraine, and now it has a global impact in that regard. It has also changed the forecast of other G20 countries, for example US, China, Japan, all revised to go lower, and the forecast is much lower than other agencies. For example, S&P Global Rating pegs India's growth at 7.3% and next year to 6.5%. But basically the point of this topic is you need to understand for the purpose of the mains examination that there are certain things which impact Indian economy. Global headwinds, global issues are now coming through, and how an inflationary trend automatically becomes deflationary. We always discuss it in theory, but in front of us we can see how runaway inflation is in turn going to decelerate the economy, in turn leading to recession. So all theory which we study in economics now is happening in front of us, and it is important to understand how these things work in that regard. With this, let's move to the third topic, which is a story which we've been developing for quite a long time, which is the stubble burning and the straw issue in Punjab. But we have now seen a very unique solution with regards to stubble burning, which is cooperative federalism. Cooperative federalism is when states come together to find a solution for something which is very obvious and very, very important. And now we are seeing that Punjab and Kerala are coming together to find a solution for both their problems. In Kerala, there's a major straw shortage for the cattle, and in Punjab, they have to burn the straw because they have no other option with regards to how they do their agricultural practices. So now Kerala and Punjab have come together to say, we have surplus in straw, you are deficient in straw, why not export within India from Punjab to Kerala all the stubble which can be used to feed the Kerala cattle, and more than that, can also in a way stabilize the prices of straw in Kerala and in the southern states itself. So Punjab has agreed to supply paddy straw to Kerala to use as fodder for livestock, as the dairy sector in southern India has been struggling because of the acute shortage of green fodder and hay. The two states have agreed to transport the paddy straw to Kerala using Centre's Kisan Rail scheme. So the railways will be used to, in a way, transport everything from Punjab to Kerala, thereby stabilizing this surplus and deficit. So the larger issue is that it's technically a win-win situation for both the states. Basically, cooperative federalism, we need to come together as a country. While Kerala gets much of its needed fodder, Punjab is able to deal with the excess paddy, which in turn leads to a very horrible situation in Delhi as of right now, the air pollution. And the dairy sector in Kerala, second only to Punjab itself, has been struggling because of this paddy straw shortage, and the acute shortage has in turn led to the quality of cattle feed to go down and high prices in that regard. And this in turn is one stone, two birds, which is that we can control the air pollution in the northern sector, and in South India the quality of fodder can be better and the prices can also be controlled. An interesting case of cooperative federalism, how environment brings everybody together. So we are doing this topic because we've been discussing a lot of different solutions: torrefaction, pelletization, concept of changing the whole crop profile. We have the concept of compressed biogas. Now we are talking about how states can come together to figure out something which is very pivotal to our environment, use deficit and surplus in a way so that we can grow together as a country itself, and Kerala and Punjab have proved that. So before I move to the last two topics, just to give you a basic summary of what we've done till this point, we first tried to understand how higher education institutions in India have been held back, do not appear in the first 100 rankings because of the problem of autonomy, and the article tried to push the fact that financial, administrative and curriculum autonomy is very, very important for them to grow and innovate in that regard. Second, we discussed a very disturbing and a continuing concept, which is the rating institutions revising their growth outlooks, and India's growth outlook has now again been degraded by 0.7 points from 7.7% to 7% with regards to Moody's. S&P has done the same, IMF has done the same, but what we tried to understand there was that how global issues, how the Ukraine-Russia crisis is manifesting itself into a form of inflationary trend, and it is leading towards a recession, a slowdown in that regard. And this topic is again something which we've been developing for a very long time. Stubble burning is an issue, and now we see cooperative federalism as a solution to it. With this, let's move to our industrial output, the IIP, which is the Index of Industrial Production. It's a very important outlook with regards to month-by-month development and how the economy is responding to different global trends itself. And though we grew by 3.1% in September with regards to industrial output itself, however, the problem is that the manufacturing sector is still weak, and we are also seeing that inflation is impacting consumer durables and non-durables, which only means that now the inflation is technically taking its roots into consumption patterns itself, and which only means that basically India is heading towards a slowdown. And in a way, these two topics come together, which is Moody and this one, to give you a picture of a recessionary trend which is setting in. So India's industrial output grew by 3.1% in September, rebounding from the contraction which happened in the last month itself. However, the double-digit rise in electricity generation was the reason for the uptick to 3.1%. Manufacturing sector still has a dampening effect because of the growth of 1.8%, and all this data is based on the index of industrial production. Very, very important generally for your preparation and static economics. But what is more interesting to us is the other important trends, which is mining rose up by 4.6%, which was 4%, so it's showing a growth. On a consequential basis, September's output was 1.5% higher than August, but technically lower than the July levels itself. The mining and manufacturing as well as electricity output are all below July levels. So basically July and September, what we are seeing is August was a little bit dampening, it was lower. We are seeing a recovery, but that recovery is not very, very steep. The problem comes here now. Inflation hurt consumption demand, which in turn led to the output of consumer durables as well as non-durables contracting by 4.5% and 7.1%. Now this is a very important point. Consumer durables and non-durables would be that if there's something which is consumptive, which is for example milk and all, which would be non-durable. Durables would be fridge, TV, things which consumers purchase over a long period of time. So this is the third successive month of shrinking output of consumer non-durables, though there has been a minor 2% rise in the production from August. Now non-durables is where inflation technically is hitting. The energy inflation is in turn impacting food, which is in turn impacting consumer non-durables. At the same point of time, the consumer durables slid for the second straight month, but production expanded by 5% sequentially, and it has been at the highest level with regards to June. So in the last 3 months, what we are seeing is that there's been up and down. September is generally good, but what I'm again trying to point out here is to add to the larger picture, consumer durables and non-durables both not showing too much consumption. More than that, manufacturing is very, very dormant at this point of time with regards to 1.8%, and it is only mining electricity which is able to push our IIP into a positive zone itself. But the basic point of the matter is now things are becoming more and more systemic, and we can see that though we are seeing an uptick from August, with regards to July and June, this is nothing. So basically the first and the fourth topic are technically to show you in a way that there is something more systemic to the Indian economy, which is now getting affected by the global headwinds, and still we are being resilient, but there is much more to come in this story, and what is going to follow is not something positive. With this, let's move to the last topic, which is an encouraging one, which is that with INS Vikrant technically getting ready, now India is ready to develop or find a twin engine carrier based Navy fighter. So with INS Vikrant going for its aviation trials, we need a twin engine deck based fighter, because we need twin engines because the thrust needs to be higher, and this is technically linked to the carrier's capacity to take close to 34 planes. But the point of the matter is we need fighters which have multi-role capability. Technically there are two basic candidates for this: Boeing FA-18 or Dassault Aviation Rafale M. Both are being evaluated to operate on an interim basis on the INS Vikrant, and basically this gives me an opportunity to basically revise these three things with you. This is the FA-18 and this is the Dassault Rafale M. These two are the basic considerations. With regards to INS Vikrant itself, it is the second most important aircraft carrier which we have, and with the capacity to have 30 different aircrafts on the deck itself, we need to have fighters which have multi-role capability, which are stealth based and which are faster than what we have with regards to our enemies. But the basic point of the matter is this is again an encouraging aspect, because we can develop our own also, because it's the time frame is 10 years. But with Rafale becoming more and more part of our basic Air Force machinery, let's see which one wins the bid. But this topic is technically discussed that the INS Vikrant is now going for the aviation trials itself, and more than that, we have to find a Navy fighter, and this is something which we need to look out for. The two basic candidates I've told you, and now with this we can summarize what we've done in this session itself. First, we understood the concept of autonomy and higher education, how autonomy is holding back higher education in India. Then we moved to the Moody's revision of India's growth rate from 7.7% to 7%. Then we move to the concept of stubble burning and how cooperative federalism can be seen as a solution for it. Thereafter, we added to the story of Moody's by showing that the IIP is showing a uptick. However, with regards to consumer durables, non-durables and manufacturing, there is not a positive story. And this topic technically is discussing a very important aspect of our defense systems, which is that INS Vikrant is now going for aviation trials, and we in India are now looking for an aircraft which can now operate with one of the most important deterrent in the world, which is the INS Vikrant for India. So I hope that you understand the importance of all these five. GS paper 3, GS paper 2, important for your preparation. Small topics but important, because at the end of the day we need to look out for the larger economic trend. As I said, economics is now playing out in front of you. Do look at how things are happening in that regard. With this, let's look at the mains question. The higher education ecosystem in India needs a light but tight regulatory framework. Discuss. This is how the question can be framed. So it's very easy. You need to talk about autonomy. Light in the sense not too imposing, but tight because quality control is important. Cooperative federalism may be the answer to stubble burning issue in India. Comment. This is again interesting because we've been talking about a lot of solutions. This is technically show you that there is one solution which we've not actually explored, which is using cooperative federalism. States coming together to use the deficit and surplus to find a way that we don't pollute our own air. With this, I would like to end the session. Thank you so much for your patience. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.